So, in a complete shocker, well, it might be not a shock to most of you guys, but to me, it was definitely a shock. The Jake Paul vs. Tyron Woodley rematch only sells 65,000 buys in the United States. Now, before we get into the video, like and subscribe would be greatly appreciated. So, as we all know, Jake Paul, very, very popular guy. In his last fight with Tyron Woodley, I myself considered that a failure when he only sold 500,000 buys, because when he fought Ben Askren, a guy who was much worse than Tyron Woodley, I always said that Tyron Woodley, even when he used to fight in UFC, he'd be a decent boxer. Ben Askren is not a decent boxer. He's a wrestler. I know I'm not the most hardcore UFC fan, but I am a casual fan. I don't enjoy it like I do boxing. Boxing, in my opinion, it's an art. There's not a single sport where dudes are this talented at punching another guy. I know MMA, it's more overall, but boxing, these guys, they specialize in just punching and avoiding the opponent's punch. It's really a thing of beauty, in my opinion. And now let's get to the topic. Yeah, I knew Tyron Woodley would have presented a much bigger challenge to Jake Paul than Ben Askren, because Tyron Woodley is a good puncher. He has decent power. He's a good striker. He won most of his fights striking. So I knew he had a chance. Ben Askren, he's a wrestler. Anyone that has watched Ben Askren fight before knew that if Jake Paul was good, he wasn't going to lose. The only question was, is Jake Paul really good? And obviously, Jake Paul is no Canelo Alvarez. He's no Floyd Mayweather Jr. He's not even an Andre Berto. But he's no bum either. Many people are saying he's a bum. He can't fight. If he can't fight, I know Ben Askren sucks at the elite level of boxing. But come on, he can beat up the average Joe. He's still a guy who does combat sports for a living, who was a two-time MMA champion. I don't think he won the UFC title, but I know he was a champion. So if Jake Paul was a complete bum, complete trash, another decent govern, Ben Askren was going to knock him out. But that's not what happened. He knocked out Ben Askren within a round, and it sold 1.9 million pay-per-view buys. So I thought for sure the Tyron Woodley fight will sell closer, maybe more. It only sold 500K. But I was expecting his fight with Tommy Fury to do close to 2 million. Because a lot of people believed that Tommy Fury would have knocked out Jake Paul. Do they still believe it? I highly doubt it. I don't know why you would believe it now. Jake Paul has proven that he has power at least at elite celebrity level. Not elite like, oh, he can knock out Sergey Kovalev or he punches just as hard as Donnie Stevenson. No, obviously not. But he punches extremely hard for a celebrity. For a celebrity, he's a big puncher. I don't think you can deny that. And a lot of people were intrigued to see what Tommy Fury, a guy who's boxed his whole life, what he can do to Jake Paul. I was picking Jake Paul to win. I thought Tommy Fury had no power, even much less power than Tyron Woodley. Well, Tommy Fury obviously pulled out of the fight, and we never saw it. So a lot of people are going to say, oh, Jake Paul only sold 65,000 pay-per-view buys against Tyron Woodley in the rematch. Obviously, he's not a star. I wouldn't go that far, because the people were expecting to see Jake Paul versus Tommy Fury, not Jake Paul versus Tyron Woodley. I think if we had gotten Jake Paul versus Tommy Fury, it would have sold good. Tyron Woodley only came in at a couple weeks' notice, I think. I don't remember the exact date, but he didn't have a lot of preparation time. So it's not a shock for me that this fight did not do well. What would be a shock for me is if he stays at this level. I think people are now going to take him legit. And if he fights Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. or Conor McGregor next, those are two of his rumored fights, it will sell a lot. A lot of people are going to want to see Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. knock him out. And Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. should win that fight. He's a former middleweight champion of the world. He's even beaten the likes of Andy Lee He's shared the ring with the likes of Sergio Martinez and Canelo Alvarez. He should beat Jake Paul. And don't forget, neither did Canelo or Sergio Martinez knock him out. But we're talking about Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., who hasn't had an elite win since 2012 when he did beat Andy Lee. I think Julio might lose that fight. Crazy as it sounds, I think he might lose that fight. Where if we were to say something like this pre his loss to Andre Fonfera, many people would have laughed at us. But I know a lot of fans also know this, that he's probably going to lose this fight. And he's going to be a black eye for boxing again. Where Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. has been a black eye for boxing for a minute now. No one expects much from him. He quits, fights randomly, even if he's doing good. I thought he was doing good against Danny Jacobs. I thought it could have been 3-2 either way. But he just quit. But it's not like he does not have the talent. No, he's talented enough to beat Jake Paul. But could he keep it together to beat Jake Paul? I have no idea. But if Jake Paul does fight Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., I'm telling you guys right now, the Mexican fan base will turn up for that fight. The Mexican fan base will pay for that fight. They will support Chavez, and they will expect Chavez to win. I'm telling you guys right now, to all the Mexicans, great boxing fans, but do not get your hopes up for Chavez. Do not. If this was Canelo Alvarez, oh boy, what would he do to Jake Paul? But this is not Canelo Alvarez. This is Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. Same guy that's been embarrassing himself, his dad, and the sport for years now. 4 years. Now, I don't want to make this video too long. It's already past the 7-minute mark. I just want to tell you guys, Jake Paul versus Tyron Woodley only sold 65K pay-per-view buys. Obviously, much less than expected. But I don't expect this to continue. It's all because, in my opinion, Tommy Fury pulled out of the fight, and no one was interested in a Tyron Woodley rematch. Give me your thoughts in the comment section below. Do you guys think this trend will continue? Jake Paul selling less than 100K pay-per-view buys? And what do you guys think would happen in a potential Jake Paul versus Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. matchup? Give me your thoughts in the comment section below. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Sadiq Boxing out.